Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Techniques to Handle Work from Home Stress and Ensure Well-Being in the New Normal. My name is Tom. I lead marketing for CMS IT. As we all know, mental health plays a very crucial role in fighting COVID-19. Many countries, including India, have implemented various restrictions and social distancing measures. And this has led to disruption to people's daily routine. The pandemic has brought in great social and economic uncertainties and giving rise to increased anxiety, depression, and even suicide across the globe. Today, we have Dr. Kurinjinathan, Head of Psychiatry, MIOT International, with us. He will share his insights and tips and techniques to handle our mental and emotional well-being during this pandemic. A very warm welcome to you, Doctor, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, thanks for the nice introduction, and you set the premise very well. I think COVID has, changed almost everybody's life, and the stress levels within the society is quite high. So, thanks for inviting me to have a talk. How I plan this, I'll give a talk for about 20 minutes, and then after that I'll open the floor for questions. And if people have questions, I'll answer them, or if people want to elaborate on any particular point, I will go through that too. Okay, so the talk is for 20 minutes, and the 20 minutes, the first 10 minutes, I'll talk about stress and specific issues related to work from home. And for the other 10 minutes, I'll talk about the emotional well-being and what are the things that people can do to help themselves maintain a good emotional state. Okay. So the first point about stress is, I think what we need to understand is stress is a natural evolved response. Okay. There is nobody on earth who doesn't get stressed. Everybody gets stressed because it has evolved us to keep us safe. Usually what induces stress is when we perceive some threats. So hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, when we were living as small groups of tribes in forests, we'll either encounter an animal or encounter another person, a stranger from a different tribe. So that will immediately trigger what's called a fight or flight response. So you either have to fight that animal, or if it's too big, you have to fly. You need to run away. So to do that, your body prepares yours by increasing the heart rate, increasing the breathing, pumping the blood to the muscles, so that it makes the muscles stronger to either run or to carry weapons and fight. And how does it do it? It does it by secreting the hormone called adrenaline. So people talk about adrenaline rush. So when the adrenaline goes through your body, you feel much stronger and you are able to do more things. This is good in acute short-term stress. Okay, but unfortunately, in the modern world, there's no animal is chasing us, and no neighbors are coming to attack us. However, we have a different kind of threat, which is a chronic threat. There's an underlying symptom, as you mentioned, uncertainty, job insecurity, difficulties with family, all these chronic stress, what we call as chronic stress. There's a hormone called cortisol. Okay, and the cortisol secretion over the course of time is quite harmful. So these days, when we talk about stress being damaging, it's mostly we talk about the chronic stress. Yes, people do get acute stress. For example, suddenly you have a deadline and your boss knows demanding something, then you might get an acute stress. But most of it that we face now is chronic stress. And with chronic stress, the physical effects are that it leads to hypertension, and it can also lead to diabetes because your glucose metabolism is affected. These are two big things. That's almost like any 45-year-old man, you will find either the blood pressure is raised or the glucose level is slightly affected. and you can trace it back to that kind of lifestyle involving a lot of stress. And apart from physical health, I mean, there are also many other conditions, but I don't want to go on about it. Uh, you have mental health difficulties because chronic stress, the common thing that you find in people doing tech jobs is what we call as burnout. You know, young, dynamic, young men and women who start with a lot of energy and passion, within like 3-4 years, they just can't, stand coming to work or even opening the system. And burnout is a very recognized common problem that's seen, and it's mainly due to chronic stress. But more severe end of mental illness like anxiety disorder and depression can also present because of chronic stress. Anxiety disorder is like, fear is a normal emotion, but in anxiety, the fear is very disproportionate. There's a general sense of doom and gloom that there is something going to go wrong, and then your heart rate is constantly high, or your breath, you find it very difficult to breathe. There is a tightness in the chest. Some people even think, when they have a panic attack, they are actually having a heart attack. They go to the hospital, they do the ECG, echo, everything turns out to be normal. And this happens 2 or 3 times. Then the treating cardiologist would say, you better need to go and see a psychiatrist, as this might be anxiety attacks rather than heart attacks. And then I mentioned about depression. In depression, what happens is, the first thing is your mood becomes very down. You're feeling constantly low. Then you feel tired most of the time. Then you lose interest in things that you normally enjoy. Like people who love watching cricket or football or reading books, listening to music, or even cooking different dishes, playing sports. All those things that used to give you joy, suddenly they don't. Okay, you just feel numb. It's called anhedonia, and that's a very characteristic symptom of depression. If you have all these things, along with it, people might start to feel a bit helpless. Even confident people lose their confidence. They start to have self-doubts. In more severe cases, people have a sense of hopelessness that nothing is going to change. It's all over. And in very severe situations, people also sometimes develop suicidal thoughts. So these are the psychological, effects of chronic stress. So this is general for anybody all over the time. Coming to COVID specific, working from home, what happens is, uh, at least when we were working in office, we had strict boundaries about, what is work, what is leisure. So you get up, you get ready, you go to the office, you do the job, you come back. Even though you might carry something, but at least that's your time, and you relax at home or you meet your friends. Right? Now it's all clubbed into one. So you wake up, your computer is at home, and the home has turned into office. And if you have a project to finish by tomorrow 5 o'clock, you can kind of leave it for a bit later. So you think anyway I'm going to be at home, so I'll do it at 10 o'clock when everyone is asleep. So the work gets spilled over. So the work leisure boundary is blurred, and almost 24 hours it feels like working. Okay, and when you relax or in leisure, it doesn't feel like a full relaxation. Uh, so people are in this limbo land. Initially, everyone was loving working from home, but very few people have cracked it. Most people are now struggling with creating clear boundary between work and leisure. And because of this then spills into domestic situations where if you're living with your wife or husband or your parents or children, then they'll have online classes. Now these classes have started, and that creates another issue to deal with. And unfortunately, India, I assume that most of you are based in India, is still a kind of male-dominated society. So women end up having to cook, clean, and do the work. It's like suddenly the workload is quite high, and this then leads to any whatever personal or professional frustration that we carry within ourselves. Most of us I would like to assume that everybody is doing a job that they love, but reality, yes, we do love our job sometimes, but sometimes it's difficult. So there is some professional, room for improvement. There is some frustration. Then you look at personal life. Yes, everybody would in the Facebook or Instagram world, might look like they married the right person and all the kids are happy. But in reality, most people have certain difficulties and carry their personal disappointments and frustrations. Before, at least there are avenues to manage these frustrations outside. You have a place to meet your friends, you have time away from your family, you talk it over, you laugh, and then you come back home and you can engage with family. But now that avenue is cut off. So the frustrations, so there's only one person that you can show it to, which is your partner. So there are more arguments. I think all over the world there have been reports of increased domestic violence. I think in Europe and some countries have been overwhelmed. And especially if you add alcohol into the mix, it's a recipe for disaster. So COVID specific, that's added. You can't call it stress, but it's just like general frustration that's impacting, having a huge impact on the emotional well-being. And on top of it, you add, the jobs are not secure anymore. There are EMIs to pay, and then if you leave the home, there might be COVID, you might catch COVID. What happens if there are elderly people living at home? You come back home, you might spread COVID unwittingly. So that's added level of difficulties that one person or one family has to cope with. So, probably people who are even feeling better now, probably starting to feel depressed. But I just want to kind of, let you know all the difficulties that people are going through. And I'm hearing, I'm seeing patients in clinic regularly now with these difficulties. And even today, I have to see a father who was actually, beaten up by his son, who completely, lost it. Like the pressure just took over, and he didn't know what else to do. And so this is real. Now, talking about how best to deal with these things, how best to maintain an emotional well-being in such a difficult time with a lot of stress. So the first thing would be you need to have good sleep. People always get surprised when I talk about sleep as important. Because most of our recovery takes place during our deep sleep stage, the last 3 to 4 hours. So what I mean by deep sleep is it's not just you sleep 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day. Even if you sleep for just 7 or 8 hours, as long as you sleep continuously, okay, that's the important bit. You need to sleep for 7 to 8 hours continuously, so that after the 4th or 5th hour, the brain starts to, your memory consolidation happens, growth hormone secretion happens, a lot of healing takes place during that time. People in shift work, unfortunately, they sleep for 4 hours, 5 hours, they wake up, they do some work, then they go and catch up for another 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and then go back to work and then sleep again. So all this bits and pieces sleep, it's not at all good. So number one, as long as you're having regular 7 to 8 hours sleep, your body and mind is prepared to handle it much better. Okay, if you're sleep deprived, believe me, things are going to get bad very soon. So after making sure that you have good sleep, what you need to do is your activity, physical activity. People become very sedentary. Whenever people talk about health risks, is it over, extra carbohydrate that's making you diabetic, or eating too much and become obese. More than anything, you would have seen all these WhatsApp videos about the biggest killer is the chat, because people just sit and don't move much. What it does is it decreases your body's ability to even even fight infections. So activity is very important. you make sure that you get at least 20 minutes of physical activity, which can be intense. Uh, when you do that, endorphins secrete in the brain naturally, and these endorphins, they are like feel chemicals. They also make you feel more energetic, and you will see in the West, people being addicted to it even when it's very cold, it's snowing outside. People are still going for a jog because that's like taking their antidepressant. So if they don't run that day, they don't feel as good. Uh, and many studies have been done all over the world, and every studies have proven that exercise is the best medicine. Even mild people with mild to moderate depression, they do as well with exercise as they do with medication. So you can even, you don't even need medication if you're doing regular exercise. Exercise means like to an intensity where the endorphins are secreted. So having adequate, good sleep and being physically active, these two alone will allow your brain to rest. It generates the hormones and chemicals that make you feel well in yourself. Then we all talk about eating, healthy eating. Basically, anything that is not processed, anything that's fresh is good. Whether fruits, nuts, grains, meat, anyone. But if you eat a lot of processed food, then you're having a negative impact on your body because processed foods affect the gut bacteria. There are a lot of like people talk about gut health or gut biome. What they mean by it is in our small intestine, there are a lot of bacteria, millions, billions of bacteria there. You need to have a very wide range of bacteria that is manufacturing a lot of good chemicals because these chemicals make us feel good and these chemicals help us fight any infection. So the immunity is linked to gut biome, and this, if we eat processed food, the gut biome is affected. Then it impacts on your mood and also your ability to fight infection. So what helps maintain a good gut biome? It's fermented food. So in agriculture all over the world, they have, one way or the other, they have worked out that fermented food is good for you. So, for example, we have yogurt, buttermilk, rice. When like idli, dosa, they are made from fermented rice powder. So have regular fermented food to maintain a healthy gut bacteria. Then socializing. We evolved from monkeys. We need other monkeys around us. So make sure that you keep in touch with your friends and family. We used to complain that we never had time, but now we have time. We just need to make sure that we call our friends and family because that when you are with your friends, automatically the stress hormones are very low. Again, many studies have shown this to be a very effective way of reducing stress. Now, these are very basic things, like sleeping, eating, physical exercise, socializing. But there are more specific ways you can do things. Like, for example, when it comes to work from home and with everybody being around all the time, shouting and fighting, it's important you have a structure to the day. Because with COVID, everything feels out of control. We don't know when it is morning, when it is night. It all gets blurred. So it's very important you have like almost like when you're in school, we had a class timetable, first English, second maths, third science, like that, whatever. So you create a structure to the day that gives you some sense of control. Whether the day goes according to the structure, it doesn't matter. But in your mind, you think you have more control over the day, and that helps reduce the stress. So structure it and then make sure that you delegate the tasks at home between husband and wife. Sometimes one might need to sit in with the child for a online class session. So as long as you plan ahead and delegate and prepare, it will be a bit more easier. And I'm not saying it will make everything fine, but it will make it a lot easier to handle the situation rather than fighting it ad hoc just at that time. Then taking time individually, because we generally, when we were working, we have time away from the family, and that It's like a pressure cooker. You get the pressure released, and then you can go back and you can let the pressure build again. So at home, even if you have a balcony or if you have a garden or somewhere, each adult, again, when I said structure the day, you put the time in, like say evening 5 to 5:45, if your time where nobody's going to disturb you and you're not going to think about the problem of the world, that 45 minutes, you can go and sit in the garden, have a tea or, or read a book or something that's just for you. Same for, both husband and wives. We live in a, 21st century modern world, so please share it. Then you normally, like any well-being conferences or courses, webinars that you attend, people always talk about mindfulness. And this mindfulness is a concept that has been, at least in India, for thousands of years. Now, Buddhist practice of mindfulness have become very popular in the West. Like all these swamis and gurus, whatever, they always say, like past. Our mind normally dwells either in the past or worries about the future, and they call it the present as present because it's a present. Was all those slogans, but it is actually true. It's very difficult to get the mind to focus on the immediate present. Even while listening, some of you probably regretting something that you did earlier today or something in the past, or worried about finishing the task that you're due to finish tomorrow or this week. And that's how any natural, the natural process of brain itself is this is the way it's designed. So it's a huge task to bring attention and maintain it just in the immediate present. And that's what mindfulness is all about. So whatever you're doing, your mind is focused on that only, and it's not focused on anything else. It's easier said than done. The easiest way to start practicing it is, when you wake up in the morning and you go to brush your teeth, try this tomorrow morning. Or people who brush night time as well. Try it, please. So you open your toothpaste, put it on the brush. Normally what happens is we start to think about something else. But what I'm asking you to do is concentrate on the taste of the toothpaste, okay? And how the brush feels on your gums, okay? And how it's, how you feel in the front, how you feel in the back, how you feel in the sides. It might just be 60 seconds, but for that 60 seconds or 2 minutes, you focus on your senses. Okay, that's what mindfulness is. It's diverting the mind from thoughts to senses. So your taste buds get activated, your touch sensors are activated. And the Japanese have this evening tea drinking culture. Okay, so they sit in a certain posture, they feel the warmth of the cup, so your nose activated. Then they smell it, so your smell is the sensory organ is engaged. Then you taste it, so taste, smell, vision. You hear nice music in the background. So your mind is focusing on all the senses and not focusing on the thoughts. So that's what mindfulness is about. Excuse me. And it's so easy to start practicing. And if you do it, whenever you get time, you do, it's not something that you have to attend the course. So when you brush your teeth or when you have your meal or when you have a drink, anything. So just focus on your senses and slowly you'll see. So that's the time the mind gets rested from all the unwanted thoughts. Okay. Then it feels a bit more energized. So try, and within a week, you'll start to notice that you can actually be mindful longer and longer. And then you can expand into your actual work. So when you're doing the work, your mind will be like fully engaged in what you're doing. And that's a very good skill to have. Okay. So please practice mindfulness, and that will help greatly. Then the other more specific things that you can work on is what's called, each individual have a thought pattern. We all think in a certain way. We all make mistakes in a certain way. What we used to call, like glass half full, glass half empty, optimists and pessimists. And similarly, there are many other ways people think about things. Some people think in absolute terms, it's all or nothing. Either some person is good or some person is bad. But in reality, most people have some good qualities and some bad qualities. It's getting the balance rather than just being in the extremes. And there are some people who will only look at negatives. They can never look at positive. Okay. So you need to be aware of your own self. What's your normal thought pattern like and how it is impacting you. If it's helping you, great. If you already have a very balanced thinking, you have a very wonderful way of looking at the world with the negatives and the positives and remain rational, great. But most of us have blind spots, and these thought patterns end up creating problems for us. Either we get into difficulties in relationship with our family or colleagues or the way we work. Okay, so just become a bit more mindful, be more self-aware, okay, and these things would help. Yeah, I can keep going, but I think we already reached this time, so I'll stop here. Okay, and I'll wait for any questions. Okay, if you want me to expand on any particular topic, I'll talk about that too.
Thank you, Doctor. I will open the line for all the attendees, and all of you can unmute from your side if you have any questions. Alternatively, you can use the chat option and type your questions there. One of us can read that out, and that can be answered.
Sir, good afternoon. Sir, Rashmikant here. Rashmikant here, sir.
Hi.
From CM. Hi, sir. Actually, my question is that you told now that exercises makes healthy, like physical healthiness.
Yeah.
And that first, actually, walking, the physical exercise means first yoga is better, or walking or something that is better. What is your? My age is around 40 age.
Okay. I mean, at 40, body is still, very supple and young. I mean, not as good as 25, but 40 you can do. I think yoga as a very specific thing. Yoga is more like flexibility, stretching. Yoga is good. Now, yoga has been in MIT, Harvard, everywhere, and now yoga is probably recommended in all sports teams all over the world. Now you go to even the most robust American athletic organization, and they'll be doing yoga. It's a different form of exercise. Okay, yoga is not like cardiovascular or it's not going to build those things, but your general body system is very good. So if you already know yoga, please continue it. If you want to learn, go and learn it. But what yoga won't do is yoga won't kind of increase your fitness on your capacity or your heart, things like that. Yes, it does. I'm not saying it does. Okay. But talking about natural endorphin secretion, okay, that's a bit more specific, where you need to, like your heart rate needs to go above 120, 130, where you start to sweat. So it's a bit more intense exercise. So you can go for a fast walk, or even if you have a skipping rope at home, you can just skip. Okay, or if you have a cycle, you can cycle, and you can do fast and slow. What's called HIIT, high intensity interval training. Okay. If you do it for 20 minutes, that will be good too. So if you can combine HIIT type exercise, some weightlifting, weight training, because all these resistance, they burn a lot of calories too. So a little bit of weightlifting, and you do yoga, you have covered the whole base. You live to more than 100.
Thank you. Thank you.
Everything is healthy too. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, hi sir. Hi sir. This is Mukesh from CMS. This is really thanks to you first of all. This is really helpful to us for whatever information you've given. I have one similar kind of question. In exercise, cycling is more effective because in cycling there is involved the brain also in that same type.
Not necessarily. I mean, like, you don't involve your brain more than some other exercise while you cycle. it depends. Some people cycle on the road, some people cycle in a cycling machine. Probably if you're cycling on the road, you need to be very careful of what happens around you. If you want to know like what's the best exercise for body, probably swimming. Because in swimming, your joints are not affected as much. Whereas if you are going for jogging, if you're cycling, there's a there's stress on the joints. Okay, so there's you can become injured if you do it incorrectly. But if you do swimming, the body weight is there is some buoyancy with when you're floating in the water, so it's not as heavy on your joints and muscles as ground exercises. But we don't have to complicate it. Even if you don't have anything, okay, if you just stand in the same place and jump up and down for 10-15 minutes, or even 5 minutes at a time, and then do 1 hour later, do it for another 5 minutes. Then in the evening, do it for 5 minutes. You'll notice, or if you just kind of sit up and down, do squats, and there are fancy ones like burpees. You can so any physical activity, even if not, at least if you're sitting at home, get out of the chair every 20 minutes, go for a walk around and come back and sit. As long as you're moving, that's good. If you can move faster while your heart rate is up, your natural endorphins secrete, then even better.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ashwati, we've had quite a few questions come in the chat. One of the questions is, what is the level of awareness in the matter of mental health? Do we know our right to our mental health, and how should one understand his or her mental health is not positive?
Okay, so see, physical health is a bit easy to define, but mental health. So what generally, the general consensus is, if you can maintain a confident and happy attitude with the ability to cope with the ups and downs in life, okay, then you are generally termed as you have sound mental health. Okay, so you feel confident about yourself, you feel confident about the world around you, and some people struggle with success. Like if we remember, I don't know how old most of you are. We had a player called Vinod Kambli, cricketer, did debut along with Tendulkar, and probably he scored more than Tendulkar in the early years. But I think the success, he just couldn't handle the success, unfortunately for him. So, some people find it difficult to deal with failures. Some people actually struggle to deal with successes too. So anybody who has the ability to cope with the ups and downs of life and maintain, a certain composure. If you have that, then you can call yourself as very sound mentally.
Okay, so okay.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, another question is, hi doctor, is physical exercise mandatory, or can we have good mental health without it? Or can you elaborate a bit on the process of food and their effect on gut microbes and how to increase gut health?
Okay. No, I mean, physical exercise is not mandatory, but some level of physical movement is absolutely necessary. Sedentary life is the biggest killer. So if you're, the maximum exercise you do is like when you shower, you turn over to wash your back. Okay, then that's not good. So you need to do a bit more. The link with mental health is, see, a lot of people have good mental health without doing physical exercise. It's not that you need to do physical exercise to maintain a good mental health. But what you would find is that when you're doing physical exercise, it's much easier for you to maintain a good mental health. Okay, you will naturally feel more energetic and you naturally feel a bit more happier.
All right, okay.
So that's regarding the exercise, but regarding the food, I think, see, now if you check, from morning to night, if you look at what you've eaten, most of us will have some processed food within us. And they're not healthy because they use a lot of chemicals, a lot of things to preserve it for much longer. And all those chemicals, they have an impact. Whereas fresh food, I mean, nowadays we can't even call it fresh food because even they have, plastics, microplastics in them. So people who go on this very specific diets, it's not good. You need a wide variety of carbohydrate, protein, fat, vitamins, minerals, all those things. Eating from different sources. You have some grain, some vegetables, some fruits, some nuts. I know if you are a vegetarian, you have a lot of protein through pulses, a lot of vegetable protein, not paneer and things like that. If you are a non-vegetarian, you can have whichever meat that you prefer. Everything in moderation is good. So you don't have to go into any specific, this is the best food to eat. This is going to make you nothing like that. Common sense, just whatever that's available, fresh ingredients, you prepare it. You can always keep it in the fridge and reheat it. That's not too bad. But don't use a lot of processed food. Okay. Processed food affect the gut biome, whereas uh, healthy fresh food. And as I talked earlier, it's about fermented food. Like Koreans have kimchi. We have pickles. Every society, one way or the other, have worked out fermented food is good. Like in olden days, people used to have palaisan, like the rice they put it in water and leave it in the morning, and they eat it with some chili or onion. I can guarantee in 20 years' time, okay, some marketing company will find a nice way to package it and sell it, and it will be a huge hit. Because once you have it, you will find how easy it is on your system. Okay. So, any fermented food, you can Google it, you can find out, but have it fresh.
Okay, so okay, got it. This is a question from Devinder. He asks, how can we maintain work and home balance when we are overwhelmed with office work? Is scheduling the only solution?
Okay, I would say the only solution. Different people have different ways of, I think one is how to keep boundaries, because what happens is say, for example, like your line manager or boss might say, like 8 o'clock in the evening, he might ring and say, "Oh, I'm really sorry to trouble you. I need it at 8 o'clock in the morning," and so you end up having to do it. So I don't know what the HR system in offices. I mean, these days with job insecurity, you're worried to say no if the boss asks. But if you have a very good, healthy relationship, as long as it's not a regular thing, if it's a one-off thing, obviously you need to help the team out. But if it's a regular thing where every other day they're kind of encroaching on your leisure time, then you need to be a bit more assertive. You need to say, in Indian context, I'm kind of not sure how HR policies work on it. You need to discuss with your team if they're encroaching on your leisure time. I'm sure people will be more considerate and look at, especially if you have families and other commitments. But the reason I talked about schedule is because schedule gives some structure to the day. At least you feel sense of that you can control something, because now nothing seems control, everything is beyond our control. So we feel like everything is being done to us, where we have no say in what happens. But you can take charge.
Okay, sir. Okay. Another question is, how do I overcome my negative thoughts, especially while working? Nowadays is impacting my productivity.
Okay. Okay, it's a good one. Like negative thoughts means many things, but I'm just talking in general. See, this is why you probably need to kind of check whether that has been your pattern right from childhood. When I talk about childhood, not like very young, from your teenagers. If you always looked at things negatively from teenagers, then you probably would need to Google cognitive behavior therapy. Okay, the point is, what it shows, the theory is that our thoughts, our emotions, and our behavior are all linked. Okay, and how negative thoughts impact on our feeling and behavior, and how that becomes a vicious cycle. Okay, so if your I don't know what your specific negative thought is about, but you need to kind of understand it better. So use a cognitive behavior therapy model if it has been a long-standing issue. But if you've always been a very relaxed, confident person, it's only in the last 2 months or 3 months that you're starting to feel negative, then you need to look at other symptoms of depression. As I mentioned, are you feeling tired? Are you feeling hopeless? Are you losing interest? Are you feeling down all the time? If that's the case, then you treat your depression, then your negative thoughts automatically goes away. Then you go back to your usual self, how you normally are. It depends on the time frame, how long you had it, and it depends on what specific area your negative thought is about. Okay.
Okay, all right, sir. Another question from Geo Chaco is how to overcome the feeling of isolation when dealing with challenges, how to stay motivated, any specific approach or technique that can be adopted?
Okay. Yes, I mean, like a good question. See, most people when they're struggling, when they're going through difficult patch, they think they feel very isolated. They think it's only happening to them. Yeah. So just having somebody to share your difficulty with, or people who have gone through similar difficulties, it creates a bond. The minute you find somebody else, you don't feel as isolated. That's why you see, like, I don't know how many of you are failing exams or different things. The friendship and bond that happens during periods of failure are much, much more stronger than, bonds that happen during success happy times. So first point is about seeking people who are in similar situation and engaging with them, socially, so that people who understand what you go through. Okay. So that's number one. Then reach out to other friends and family who probably are feeling similarly isolated. So sometimes people wait for others to call you. Okay, don't wait for it. If you have your old friend that you like, you look at the old album, let's give them a ring. Or if you have, like people now have Zoom, friends meeting over Zoom and talking, just catching up with old days. It might be free to all the others, but for that particular group, okay, that's very refreshing. That's very relaxing. The hormones in your body changes. It rejuvenates you. So you seek out rather than just wait for them. Okay, but please don't feel isolated, because isolation is a big, an indicator that slowly you'll end up being depressed.
The next question is there a proper screen time, the usage of mobiles and other gadgets which should be followed after working hours in order to utilize our time fruitfully with our family?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, screen time probably is now the biggest of arguments at home. Kids are addicted to gadgets, adults, we are addicted to gadgets. Again, I don't know the age group of the attendees. When I was young, feeling bored is normal. Most of us felt bored on a regular basis. But now I don't remember when was the last time I felt bored, because I immediately pick up the phone, I check news or read WhatsApp or this. There's always something to kind of keep your mind engaged with the phone. So more and more people are addicted to it, because when you touch the screen, something comes up, it gives you a dopamine hit. Okay, so dopamine is a feel-good chemical. So every time you touch the phone, it makes you feel good. So more and more people keep going back to the phone again and again. And gadget addiction is real. Internet addiction is real. Every year in China, around 10 to 20 boys, died. What they do is, because they are so addicted to the game, they wear nappies. They don't even get out to go for toilet. They just go toilet in their nappies. These are adult. I'm talking about 18-year-old, 16-year-old boys, and they can't get up and go to eat or drink. So they have everything next to them in the table and put a cube. And there are people who have IV drips going in. Okay. And then they have electrolyte imbalance, have a arrhythmia, and diabetes. So that level of extreme addiction is now known in the world. Last year or the year before, London opened first internet addiction clinic in England. So if you notice, the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is touch your phone, and the last thing you do is put your phone down. Then that shows that you have a problem. And the other thing is the screen time. What it does is it affects your sleep, because the wavelength of the light that comes from this blue screen is similar to the ones that we get from the sun. So the brain thinks it's daytime and doesn't secrete the hormone melatonin, which is needed for sleep. So 50 years ago, when the sun sets, most rural areas didn't have electricity. So by 8 o'clock, no, 6:30 sun sets, by 7:30 they have had their meal. The melatonin starts to secrete once it's dark. By 8:30, most of them are asleep. They wake up around 5:36 because the morning sunlight leads to secretion of orexin. Now with all the lights, most people are sleeping because they're tired. They're not sleeping because melatonin is in the brain. So that's a big issue now. So yes, reducing the screen time, at least 1 or 1.5 hours before you go to bed, is helpful and healthy. And for children, just use it as a reward for the work they do. I think the American Pediatric Association recommends it for like maximum of 1 or 2 hours, not more than that, for children. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. The next question is, for most people, work from home seems to be working fine and they're coping well with it. But for some others, it could feel more like a house arrest situation. Please shed some light on how they could cope with this current scenario.
Okay. Yeah, very good question. See, again, you have to deliberately make a choice and prioritize. So in the morning, whatever time you get up, you need to get out of the room and expose yourself to sunlight. I haven't talked about vitamin D, about mental well-being, and also in COVID. Okay. So sunlight, exposing yourself to sunlight in the morning and evening is very good. Whether people know it or not, somehow they have done all the Surya Namaskar in the morning and all those things. It's a Surya Namaskar every morning is probably the best way to start the day. Okay, you have like doing some stretch exercises and you're exposing yourself to sun, and it's a very calm 15 minutes or whatever. So feeling locked up within the same room itself is a risk factor for getting depressed. You would notice that when you're traveling, your mind is a bit more free, seeing constantly changing images. You're traveling by bus, by car, by train, sitting at the window, just staring at the open space. You suddenly feel yourself more relaxed, more creative. Whereas you put anybody within 4 walls, okay, after a week or maybe 10 days, they are itching to get out. Just get out anywhere, just go to the shop, somewhere, because sitting within 4 walls is very mind numbing. It actually slows down your thinking, it reduces your productivity. So if you are living in an apartment, just go to the roof. Okay. If you live in a place where there's garden, just go and walk in the garden. Make yourself leave the house, okay, but in a safe way. You wear your mask, you maintain the distance, and then meet people. Again in the social space. If you're living in an apartment, if there are neighbors that you get along with reasonably, stand 10 feet apart, wear the mask, and just catch up. Catch up about the recent TV show that you watched. There's Amazon Prime, Netflix, you name it. All these have wonderful shows. You can engage with other people. Okay, so don't allow yourself to feel stuck in the house and being a prisoner. You need to get out, even just to the balcony at least, and expose yourself to sun and create new things. See new things. So that way you won't feel stuck.
I think we're done with the questions. Once again, thank you so much, Doctor, and thank you, Shibi, for organizing this. And thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for giving me time. Okay, all the best.